Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I know the Kavanaugh Ford testimony is going on today, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but in a way that probably is something that you've never heard that I think should be considered, and I know it's never brought up because I think the METO movement would call people sexist if they did, but it's the probabilities of fabrication or making something up. And I'll give an example. Say Mrs. Ford was walking home from, say her car broke down and she decided to walk home. It was only a couple miles, but she had to go under an overpass, and she got assaulted and raped by a homeless male, someone she never knew, someone who has nothing. Anyway, she filed a police report and filed charges. In that instance, we can ask ourselves what would be the reasons or incentives for Mrs. Ford to lie about this homeless person insulting her. And think it through in your head. I can't think of one reason why she would make it up. So that doesn't still mean it happened, but if you're looking at it from a logical, common sense perspective, you can say there's probably a very, very high probability that she's telling the truth. But when you go higher up this power structure, clear to the top. I mean, when you go up to Kavanaugh, that's one of the most powerful positions in the country. And women are very passionate about a lot of things, and pro-choice women. And they're very, very passionate about having the right to choose and making sure that's never ever taken away from them. So you can ask yourself, in this instance, which is where we find ourselves, what are the incentives, or are there any, for Ford to fabricate or make something up? And you'd have to look at her background. And then you could say, well, yeah, there's a really, really high incentive for maybe she's a very right to choose person. And so, anyway, that's the way it needs to be looked at. And that's why, to me, that's why in this instance you really need rock solid evidence of guilt. I mean, you don't want testimony. Sorry. I know both sides say they have testimony that backs up their side, but there's so much at stake, and people are so divided over Supreme Court nominees, and especially those they think might affect the right, the right to choose. We're just so divided that it's hard to know. So that's where we find ourselves at. But because we're so divided and the stakes are so high, then we need, in my opinion, we really need solid facts to shelve a Supreme Court nominee. And when I mean solid facts, I mean like a police report at the time that, for example, describes an assault and actually describes Kavanaugh physically as the one that did it, or a journal entry from this woman that could be forensically tested to know it was her handwriting and that it was written back during when this occurred. I mean, that's two examples of solid evidence, which I think could be enough to shelve a nominee. But the Democrats, they're looking at it a lot different. What they're doing is and I think they're doing this because it's a Republican nominee, because they wouldn't do this on a Democrat, is they're saying, okay, there's these damning allegations against you. We need you to provide significant, detailed, bulletproof evidence that shows you didn't do it. Now that's impossible. I mean, it's impossible to do. If he wasn't there, there's not going to be any evidence. So to me, it's a sham by the Democrats. But they've always, when it's been a Republican, they've always went by the seriousness of the charge, where that takes precedence over anything. And they did that for decades. But that's another concern you need to have, is their supporters, if they know it's about the seriousness of the charge, then they will come forward and they will make sure they're very, very serious charges. So, but I just don't think it's fair for Kavanaugh to say, since the charges are so serious, we need to put the brakes on this, and then we need to ask you to exonerate yourself. Plus, they're asking for an FBI investigation, which it's just a stall tactic, I believe, because I haven't heard one Democrat say what the FBI would investigate. There isn't anything. But I mean, they ought to give at least some idea that all they can do is talk to the accused and the accuser. But anyway, I just think the probabilities are so high that I'm not saying these accusers are lying, but what I am saying is that if there was no accusers of Kavanaugh, some fake ones would have came forward and fabricated evidence because of what's at stake. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great day.